and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you've joined us for the Life Sciences Investor Forum. Our next presentation of the day is from BioCorRx. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Lourdes Felix, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer, and Jake Nichols, Consultant of BioCorRx, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol BICX. Welcome, Lourdes and Jake.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your time today. I am Lourdes Felix, CEO and CFO of BioCorRx. BioCorRx is a publicly listed company on OTCQB under the ticker symbol BICX. We are a fully SEC reporting company. Later in our presentation, I will introduce you to my colleague and consultant, Jake Nichols, who will provide an introduction to our newly acquired drug asset, Lucemyra. During today's presentation, I'll talk about the size and urgency of the addiction crisis, why long-acting naltrexone, and specifically our lead drug candidate, BICX 104, can materially improve outcomes, and how we're thinking about our development path and partnership opportunities. I will try and keep things focused so that there's time for your questions. Before I begin, here's our standard safe harbor slide. This presentation includes forward-looking statements. Actual results can differ materially due to financial, economic, regulatory, and other risks. We do not update these statements except as required by law. With that, I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about BioCorRx. This next slide is our key milestone and what we're building. BICX 104 is following a 505(b)(2) registration pathway with the potential for NDA filing in OUD, AUD, and MUD that is being projected within the next 2 years. BioCorRx Pharmaceuticals, our majority-owned subsidiary, will be seeking partnership opportunities for the BICX 104 programs. To better define the scope, we're focused on 3 major indications, which are AUD, alcohol use disorder, OUD, opioid use disorder, and MUD, methamphetamine use disorder. In terms of technology, BICX 104 is an implantable, long-lasting, fully absorbable naltrexone pellet in development for these disorders. The unmet need is very straightforward. There is no long-acting treatment greater than 30 days currently in the US market for patients suffering with OUD, AUD, or MUD. Our strategy is simple. If you can reliably cover the highest risk relapse window with a single sustained treatment, you can improve adherence, reduce non-compliance, and potentially improve outcomes. For BioCorRx, this comes with more than a decade of work in addiction treatment. For over a decade, BioCorRx has been developing a comprehensive approach to treatment programs for substance use and related disorders. Our approach has always been built around helping families, innovating with purpose, conquering challenges, and improving lives. We're a public company with operating experience in addiction-focused programs, and that experience is why we believe the market is always demanding improvements, especially around adherence and relapse prevention. This is currently the big picture that we're working in. We're still living through a global addiction crisis across alcohol, opioids, and stimulants. This slide shows the continuing and staggering effects of drug-involved overdose and the estimated US economic burden. These numbers are clear and represent an enormous burden on families, healthcare systems, employers, and governments. They highlight why better tools, especially tools that improve real-world adherence, matter. One important tool in this space is naltrexone. Naltrexone is a drug that has a long track record and is widely recognized. It's a medication in substance use disorder care that was FDA approved in 1984. It has a strong history of safety and efficacy. It's non-narcotic and non-addictive. It can be effective in harm reduction, and it helps reduce cravings for opioids and alcohol. And I believe that most importantly, there is no withdrawal symptoms when stopping its use. BioCorRx Pharmaceuticals is developing BICX 104 as our lead asset, an implantable, fully absorbable, long-acting naltrexone pellet designed to maintain therapeutic coverage across a critical time frame. Early treatment is often where the system breaks down. The first 3 months of treatment for many individuals are a high-risk window for relapse. For alcohol use disorder, about 70% of patients relapse within 12 months. And the first 3 months are especially high risk. For OUD, up to 91% of patients relapse. So if we want to improve outcomes, we want to address the period when patients are most vulnerable and where adherence is most likely to break. That's why BICX 104 is designed as a sustained 3-month treatment with the goal of reducing non-compliance and relapse risk by lowering the burden of repeated dosing decisions during the most fragile period. So what exactly is BICX 104 in practical terms? Conceptually, BICX 104 simply is 3 months of naltrexone in one implant. Our goal is to make staying on therapy easier than falling off of therapy by reducing the need for frequent redosing decisions and by providing consistent long-acting coverage. This next slide shows where it sits in our pipeline. This slide summarizes our pipeline focus around BICX 104 and its targeted indications: OUD, AUD, and MUD, and it highlights our development work and IP progress. The key takeaway here is that we are advancing a lead clinically studied long-acting naltrexone implant program designed for the unmet need in these high-burden disorders. I'll now move into the clinical study foundation. This is our phase 1 PK and safety study. It was a randomized, open-label, parallel group interventional study in healthy volunteers with 24 participants total and 2 arms: the BICX 104 implant compared to Vivitrol, which is a marketed intramuscular naltrexone injection. The key endpoints here were pharmacokinetic parameters along with adverse events. The study is completed. It started in June of 2022 with the primary completion in February of 2023 and the actual study completion in March of 2023. BioCorRx was the sponsor with collaboration from NIDA and the NIH HEAL initiative. Here's what we saw at a very high level. This was our very first human study of the long-acting implant that delivers naltrexone for about 3 months. We saw steady drug levels over 12 weeks, similar to the existing injection, and overall it was well tolerated, with side effects consistent with that of what we know about naltrexone, and mostly mild injection site type reactions. So how do we take that foundation and move toward registration? We are evaluating target indications across OUD, AUD, and MUD. We are pursuing a 505(b)(2) regulatory approach that leverages prior naltrexone experience. The value proposition is very straightforward. A 3-month duration may support adherence compared to monthly options, with the goal of improving real-world persistence during the highest risk relapse window. This next slide here shows that we have built a bench of experienced advisors to execute our mission. We've assembled medical, scientific, and regulatory expertise with deep experience in substance use disorder treatment development. And I'd like to highlight one example, Dr. Kate Beebe-Javarny. She serves as principal investigator for the BICX 104 programs and has experience spearheading development. For example, probufene. She was the PI that oversaw the development, commercialization of probufene, a subcutaneous implant for opioid use disorder. The broader consultant group brings years and decades of experience across addiction medicine, clinical operations, regulatory strategy, pharmacology, and long-acting implantable product development. On the commercial side, we also brought in seasoned leadership. Commercially, we have advisors with deep partnering and go-to-market experience across biotech and medical products, people who have negotiated licensing and partnership deals from preclinical stages through launch. This all matters because our near-term objection is very partnership-oriented. We are pursuing partnership opportunities for BICX 104. And in the interest of time, I would like to turn it over now to my colleague and consultant, Jake Nichols, who will introduce our newly acquired drug asset, Lucemyra. I do invite you to come back and take a look at our presentation slides 15 and 16 that talk about our programs and experience in treatment support, specifically the Beat Addiction Recovery Program for substance use disorder, as well as OnCraveRx weight loss program. And Jake, I will turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you so much, Lourdes. And it's a pleasure to be with you all today to talk to you a little bit about Lucemyra olefexidine, a very underutilized tool in the addiction medicine toolbox. I'm a pharmacist by training. I've been working in the substance use disorder for the past 15 years, and I've also been in long-term recovery for that period of time as well. I was previously with US World Meds, which is the company that launched Lucemyra back in 2018. And this is a very unique medication. It is specifically FDA approved for the treatment of opioid withdrawals that occur upon abrupt discontinuation of any sort of opioid, whether it be an illicit product or a prescribed product. And the way that this works is it works on a very specific chemical in the brain called norepinephrine. And it's a chemical that decades ago we identified as a primary mediator of the physical symptoms of opioid withdrawal. That includes nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, restlessness, insomnia, and so on. These medications, or this class of medications, can be very effective in helping to manage the early stages of withdrawal. Some of you may have heard of a drug called clonidine. It's in the same class as this medication. We've had that drug since 1974 when it was first FDA approved. Collectively, these drugs are called alpha-2 agonists, and that's just the name of the receptor that it works on in the brain to, again, reduce the outflow of that norepinephrine, which primarily is the mediator, which again causes those physical opioid withdrawal symptoms. The primary difference with Lucemyra or lofexidine versus clonidine is in its inability to lower blood pressure. Some of you may recognize clonidine as an antihypertensive medication, obviously for high blood pressure, which is its primary use. It's a very potent antihypertensive and therefore limits our ability to use it in addiction treatment for withdrawals, because as we push that dose or give it more frequently, a lot of patients will tend to bottom out, as they say, meaning their blood pressure goes too low and they can't tolerate it. Lucemyra was brought to market to basically ameliorate that, and this drug was utilized in Europe starting in the early 1990s, and we had a great deal of clinical data behind it before we were able to get it FDA approved here in the United States. The American Society of Addiction Medicine, which is the primary clinical body which determines and publishes clinical guidelines on how we treat addictive disease, specifically made a statement in their last guideline update that said, if we are using alpha-2 agonists, this class of medications to treat opioid withdrawal, we should be using Lucemyra as opposed to clonidine, again, primarily because its inability to lower blood pressure. Again, as I alluded to at the beginning, I've always found from the beginning of time since I've worked with this that this is a very underutilized treatment option in the toolbox. And there still is tremendous potential out there to introduce this to clinicians that haven't had the chance to learn about it or to use it in their patients. So with that, I think we'll pause and we have some time to take some questions.
Yeah, I would just like to thank everyone and end here with our leadership team slide. I'm Lourdes Felix, CEO and CFO and Director, and also the founder and president of BioCorRx Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Lou Lucido serves as president and director, and we are supported by a great group of experienced leadership in clinical project development and by the broader scientific and commercial advisor teams that you saw earlier. So to close, I do want to wrap up and say that the investment and partnership takeaway is that we believe BICX 104 addresses a clear unmet need, a long-acting treatment beyond 30 days in a very large and with very large and urgent indications. And we have completed the phase 1 PK and safety work. We're advancing it on a 502(b)(2) strategy with a clear line and sight to potential NDA filings within the stated time frame. We are a first-time commercial company, and as Jake just described, we are well on our way of generating revenues and have had commenced to do that back in March of 2025. Thank you all very much for your time this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are in the US, and look forward to any questions that you have that we can answer for you.
Lourdes, I'm happy to read one here to get things started if you'd like.
Please, go ahead, Jake.
Who are the primary competitors for BICX 104, and what specific advantages does this 3-month duration provide over monthly Vivitrol injections beyond convenience?
Do you want to take that, Jake? I know you're very well versed in the addiction space.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Well, convenience is definitely a big part of it. If we look at compliance data that's associated with Vivitrol specifically, we tend to see patients come back for the second or third injection, and then we tend to see a tremendous drop-off after that. The other challenge we also see with Vivitrol is that towards the end of the dosing interval, there is a relatively noticeable and rapid decline in plasma levels. And that presents a potential opportunity for substance use and loss of the protective effect of naltrexone. Obviously, with a 3-month product, it gives you much more steady blood level across that period, and that tends to be consistent as well.
Thank you. We have another question here that asks, you've now reported 2 consecutive quarters of meaningful revenue after having 0 revenue last year. How should investors think about the trajectory from here? Gradual ramp or step change as you add new accounts? So absolutely, we are expanding. Our intent and our estimate here over the next short-term and long-term is to seek additional revenue streams for Lucemyra and continue to grow on our revenues. Here's another one. Who are the primary competitors for BICX 104? Jake, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, certainly. There aren't many, and I apologize I didn't answer that earlier when we took this question, but there aren't many beyond Vivitrol, being the every 28-day injection. There has been an oral formulation of naltrexone that's been on the market for many decades now, which does have some use in addiction medicine, but clinicians do tend to prefer longer-acting formulations. But to my knowledge, there are no other longer-acting naltrexone products that are currently going through clinical trials or evaluation. I think the other thing that's important to note too with BICX 104 is that we're looking at a very unique one of the indications being methamphetamine use disorder, of which we currently do not have any FDA-approved treatment options.
Thank you for that, Jake. Thank you.
Sure.
So one last question is asked, what manufacturing capabilities exist for implantable pellets? And have you qualified manufacturing partners for scale up? We do have a CDMO for our ongoing clinical studies. We will be looking for partnering with a commercial manufacturing firm, manufacturing companies as we get closer to NDA submission. And that was one of the primary reasons why I did mention that we are seeking partnership opportunities. And with that, we will wrap up today's presentation. Thank you all very much for your attendance and for listening in and for your interest in BioCorRx.